Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey.
Charlie, I want to start with you. The main character is a motivational speaker named Michael, and you allude in the movie to something called the Fragoli delusion and the possibility that Michael himself may have it. Can you tell me what the Fragoli delusion is?
Yeah, Michael doesn't have it, but it was sort of the jumping off point for me. It's the belief that everyone else in the world is the same person. And I'd read about it, and I thought it was an interesting way to express Michael's plight.
And how was it fruitful to you as an idea for a drama, for a story, the idea that everyone around you is the same but in a disguise?
Well, I mean, I don't like to talk too much about
Sure.
what the thing is about, but I mean, I think it's a way to sort of approach the idea of not being able to connect to other people.
Yeah. Duke, in the movie, Michael's problem is set up as something that's unique to him. I mean, he is, until he meets Lisa, he's the only person that seems to be an individual. But I think that, we're all living in a society where people have talked a lot about our inability to connect despite being more connected than ever. How unusual do you think Michael actually is in his struggle to connect?
Well, the film is told from his point of view. So it's really Michael's story. Um, how how common is it of a problem that Michael's experiencing? I think based on our experience of showing the film around the world, it seems pretty common.
And in this film, it's love or Michael's imagining of what love is that shakes him out of it. And again, I know, Charlie, that you don't want to talk too much about the film. And I was at the screening last night, and one of the things that was remarkable in the Q&A afterwards is people in the audience, after prodding you a number of times to talk about the film, started explaining the film to you and telling you what they thought it meant. So can you speak a little bit about why you don't like to talk about the themes of the film?
I don't like to talk about the themes of anything that I write. And the reason is because you do something, and when you're done with it, when you make a film or a piece of art, it's then an interaction between the person who's viewing it and the piece. And to not allow that process to take place by saying what this thing is, it limits that possibility of interaction. And I specifically write things so that hopefully it's layered enough that people can come away with separate and individual reactions to it.
And you seemed last night to enjoy the audience members that were saying, I think it's about this, or this is what I felt. Is that a fun part of the experience as you've been doing the press for this movie, hearing back from what people make of it?
It's always great to hear different things because it means that the piece is successful. It's not sort of this kind of constricted piece with a message at the end. It is an open-ended conversation with an audience. And yeah, I love that with anything that I do.
And Duke, do you have a similar feeling? Are you also uncomfortable about talking about the themes of the film, or?
Yeah, I mean, for the same reason, even when Charlie and I were working together on the film, we didn't talk about theme. When I read the script, I responded to certain themes within the script and certain things that I related to on a personal level. But when we talked about the story, it was about these characters and what they were experiencing from a subjective point of view.
Mm-hmm. You're listening to Q. I'm joined by Charlie Kaufman and Duke Johnson, co-directors of the new film Anomalisa. So, Duke, I want to actually get into the technical side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Is it right to call them puppets in the movie, or is it models more accurate? Like, what is the right term?
They are puppets,
They are
actually,
puppets.
yeah.
And how did you first get into using puppets and models to tell stories? How did you first get into animation and this kind of storytelling?
Well, I went to film school, and I went to undergraduate film school, and then I went to grad school at AFI in Los Angeles, and I made a thesis film, a live-action thesis film, and I invited a friend of mine named Dino Stamatopoulos, who's also Charlie's friend as well, and kind of is the reason that Anomalisa exists in this format, ultimately. But I invited him to the premiere of my thesis film, and he liked it, and he offered me the opportunity to direct an episode of his stop-motion animated TV show on Adult Swim called Moral Oral. And it was in its second season at the time, and I was going to direct an episode in the third season if it got another season. So I ended up spending about a year and a half at his studio, sort of learning the ins and outs of the medium and kind of falling in love with it.
And so, Charlie, when you're approached by this mutual friend who says, because this Anomalisa started out as a stage play, almost like a radio play, and they say, this would be great for a stop motion animation film. Had that even crossed your mind at that point, or could you see it when it was presented to you as a potential film?
I had written it to be a radio play. I had written it not to be seen. So, I had a little bit of reticence about transforming it. I had no plans to do anything with it. I liked that it was performed twice in 2005 and it was over. If you saw it, you saw it. If you didn't, you didn't. Um, but I like stop motion animation. So, and I was looking to get stuff done. It had been very hard for me for the last 6 years or so to get anything made, and this was a possibility. So I said, sure, if they could raise the money. And they were able to raise some money, so we started.
Yeah. And it was the same. So just to explain the film, the stage play, the three actors who were in the film, Jennifer Jason Leigh, David Thewlis, and Tom Noonan, were behind a screen on the stage
No,
play.
no,
They
no,
were.
no. They were just sitting on stage with scripts. There was Carter Burwell, who had written the score, and he was conducting it with musicians on stage, and there was a Foley artist. And that was the presentation. So what you're hearing is not what you're seeing. And the idea was that the audience would create the imagery.
Right. And Tom Noonan does all the voices except for the two other characters.
That's
So he
correct,
does the
yeah.
voices for everyone. And he was doing them simultaneously, yes? Like in the film as well. He just was acting
as if he was acting these different parts in real time. Yep.
And so then tell me how this worked, Duke. Did the actors record the voice track first and then the animation came afterwards?
Yeah, that's right. Very first thing we did before even talking about any of the creative design or artistic aspect, what it's going to look like, we got the actors together in the same room and recorded them all together. So that kind of set the tone for everything else. And it's a little unusual in animation to record all the actors together in one room. Usually they record them separately, but we intentionally recorded them together so they're overlapping each other and interacting with each other in sort of real time.
And did that make it easier? And again, I'm trying to understand how the directing worked. Charlie, were you involved as the animation was happening, or were you directing the actors doing the voice work? And then
We both did everything.
Oh, okay.
I had directed the play, and we started working together. Animation is a process that's very front-loaded because you can't do multiple takes, especially if you don't have money. So everything, for the most part, is figured out before you even start shooting. You do an animatic, which is basically a storyboard in real time put to the dialogue, and you figure out what you're going to do. And Duke and I did all of that together. We did the designs together, worked with the production designers, and so that was the process. And then during actual production, Duke was on the stages, which went on for 2 years, and I would be in contact with Duke and Rosa, our producer, constantly. I would be seeing all the footage as it came in. We'd be talking about problems and making adjustments and stuff like that.
And what was it like for you to work with the puppets? I understand that you tried to make a claymation movie when you were a kid, Charlie?
I did make a claymation
Oh, you
movie.
did?
Yeah, in high school. Yeah, I've done a little bit of animation, when I was a kid. I love this stuff. I love little things. I love sets of any size. I like make-believe stuff, and I always have. And so it was very exciting to see this thing, these little sets and these little very human-looking dolls, and then to watch as they came to life, because the animators are really extraordinary, and the animation is very subtle and nuanced, and it was exciting to me.
Yeah. This, it was a short time for the actors doing the voices off the top, but the actual animation took 3 years. Am I right? Is that how long it took to make?
2 years of physical production, shooting every day. 3 years was the whole process from the start to the finish.
And how much footage would you get in a day?
In a day,
Like how much, sort of in terms of time, rather, like seconds?
Yeah, about 10 seconds a day. We got a minute a week of footage. Each animator had a goal of 2 seconds of animation a day, but some would get maybe a little more, and a lot would get less than that. So,
and there's a really beautiful and extraordinary sex scene in the film, which I understand also took a really long time to shoot that scene.
Yeah, that took about 6 months just to get the first shot of that scene.
Wow. What made it so difficult?
Well, there's an emotional quality to the scene that we wanted to get right. We wanted it not to be like this comical puppet sex thing. We wanted it to, be a natural progression of the scene. and the interaction of these two characters in this moment. So getting the emotions of the scene right and the subtlety and the nuance took some figuring out. And then all the technical aspects to achieve that. We had to design special puppets and special rigs to move the clothing and have all the fabrics in the scene and all the different clothing elements, have them be animatable and have the puppets be able to compress to each other. And it was very complicated.
Well, and I imagine also that am I right in thinking this is perhaps the first sex scene in stop motion animation? Like, did you have anything to draw on for this?
I think sex has been explored in stop motion before. I can't think of a specific example, but maybe not in American cinema, and maybe not in a feature. It certainly has been explored in animation, but it might be actually.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And were animators, because I wanted to, I know you can't speak for the actors in the film, but last night, Duke, you said something that was really interesting at the screening. You said that the animators are actors. And I'm wondering about the relationship between the actors who voiced the characters and then the animators who actually moved the bodies of the puppets. Did they have any kind of connection or relationship, or did they both have a sense of ownership of the character?
Well, the actors started it, like we said, they started everything, but we also filmed them. So there's a lot of visual reference that was used that the animators could look at. But actually very similar to the Being John Malkovich clip where he's talking about sort of channeling, looking through the world through somebody else's eyes. I think the animators attempt to do that. They listen to the voice and kind of try to embody the character and imagine the physicality that this voice implies,
Yeah. Charlie, did you have to think differently about the directing off? I mean, when the two of you are working directing the actors with the voice, is it different than had you been moving actors through space as a director? Did you have to bring out things, or did you feel like you had to make it bigger because the voice meant so much?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think maybe the opposite, because we had done it as a theatrical presentation where it was much bigger. It was very presentational, and we were bringing it down. And these actors are very good, and so their voices are very good, and I don't feel like we had to do much to sort of direct it. We, occasionally we'd give suggestions, but they were there.
Yeah. The puppets, which are beautiful, are lifelike but not too realistic. I'll start with you, Duke. How did you determine the degree of realism that you wanted in the look of the puppets? I understand that sometimes people get creeped out when puppets look too much like humans. I mean, is there a point that you think we can't cross that?
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say exactly what that threshold is and how to find it, because I think it came kind of instinctually, or just Charlie and I looking at the designs as they progress and responding to them. We knew that we had determined that a lot of this sort of uncanny valley feeling came from a sensation of dead eyes.
Yeah.
So we spent a lot of time kind of investigating the eyes and how to make them feel alive and really articulate. So, the eyes were very animatable. They moved independently, and the animator could manipulate them with a pen. And we made sure that they were very reflective and looked moist. And we had eye lights at all times in the eyes and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Charlie, did you feel that you could bring out a different level of emotion by using the puppets than with human beings? Or expression?
I mean, going into it, I'd never done anything like this before, so I didn't really know, what it was going to be or how it was going to look, which is, I guess, true of everything I've ever done. So, you just go in and you kind of try to figure it out as you go along, and that's what we did in this one. So, I think Duke and I came to sort of see what the puppets offered in terms of emotion and in terms of fragility as we were making the movie.
And did it enable, I mean, a lot of your work has a sort of a surreal or a hyper reality kind of approach. Did you feel like that working in animation allowed you to do more with that? Or did it just feel like a natural extension of the kind of vision you had already in your previous work?
I've never had a problem doing that in live action, really, so it wasn't like I was looking for a license to do it. So it was just another forum to explore a whole different process of making a movie, and and an exciting learning experience for me.
You mentioned sort of seeing how it works as it goes along, Charlie, and I'm trying to think, given the pace of it, given that you only had sort of seconds of footage a day, I imagine when you're making a film with live actors, you can have a sense at an end of a scene that worked, that didn't. Given the kind of pace, how do you assess if it's working or not, given how slowly it's going and given the kind of the precise work that has to go into something and having to redo it? Did you have to think about it differently?
I wasn't able to assess it. What I was able to assess was this moment looks beautiful, and I could see that. This moment looks beautiful. But how it was going to fall together as a piece was really impossible for me to see. So it was kind of like it was a matter of faith to just move forward with it, and we'd get what we got,
Did that feel fraught?
Um,
Or is that what you always experience when you're making a film?
Well, I think you do have a sense when you're doing a live action thing, oh, this scene was really good. And you're sometimes wrong, that you find out in post-production. So yeah, I think it always feels kind of dangerous and risky and, uncertain.
Did that feel the same way for you, Duke? Was there a sense of like, oh God, what are we doing here? Is this going to work?
Yeah, I mean, there's always that, but I've worked in live action as well, and I have felt that too. I think that's maybe just part of the process. I mean, in live action, you look at your rough cut, your first edit, and you think, oh God, this is a total disaster. I failed completely. And then you find it in the edit and it comes together. Animation is just sort of a different process. And once you kind of accept the process is what it is, you learn to work within that process because you do have the animatic, which is sort of your blueprint or your guideline, which you don't typically have in live action. And it does move slowly, and you don't get a whole scene to see if that scene works, but you can see what does and doesn't work within a shot, and then you have potentially weeks to plan the next shot coming up and make adjustments to things to sort of maybe compensate for what you felt was missing in this shot. So.
Yeah. The film is nominated for a Golden Globe this weekend for Best Animated Film, but it's nominated up against 4 children's movies. Is it strange to? I mean, it's a wonderful honor, obviously, to be nominated, but is it strange to see it? I mean, as people always say, Charlie, is it strange to have Anomalisa sitting there up against a bunch of children's movies?
Yeah, I think it feels ghettoized to me, and I mean, we think of animation as a form, not a genre. And, yeah, I mean, why? Why are we there? And what are we? I mean, it's weird anyway in any film to be up against other films because everybody's intentions are different in different films, and you're making films about different things. And what is the competition exactly? But it sort of feels like this is a very specific place that we're put that obviously we don't exactly fit.
Duke, as someone who's an animator, do you think that there is a growing interest or talent in America for making more, I guess, serious or adult animated movies? I mean, sort of similar to what you see in Japan, say?
I don't know. I don't. I don't think so. I mean, I haven't really seen that. I think people respond to what they're given the opportunity to see. There hasn't been really an opportunity to see animation for adults in this, like dramas for adults in America. So I think that's yet to be seen. If our film does well and people like it, then that's an indication that, they like it.
Yeah. The last thing I wanted to ask you about, the song in the film that Jennifer Jason Leigh, that Anomalisa character sing, Girls Just Want to Have Fun. How did that come to be in the film? How did that song come to be?
In the play, it was My Heart Will Go On by Celine Dion, and we couldn't get the rights to it we couldn't afford the rights to it for the movie, so we were looking for something else, and we had a bunch of possibilities, and Jennifer rehearsed and sang this, and we just fell in love with the performance. So and we could afford 30 seconds of it.
You could afford 30 seconds of it. Thank you so much, both of you. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.